Hi everyone, welcome to Sho-Time Talk. This is your host, Tom Shimura. 皆さんこんにちは。Sho-Time トークを運営する志村智也です。このチャンネルではアメリカの専門家を交えて大谷翔平選手やメジャーリーグについて本音で語っています。最後までお楽しみください。Let's talk about baseball coverage in the US and Japan.You've been interviewed by a lot of Japanese media over the past 4 years, I think. What are some questions that you found interesting that you were asked?
Well, I think it's interesting that everybody always asks me to predict his stats. They always want to know, what are his stats going to be? What numbers do you think he's going to have? And nobody really in the United States asks that question. They want to know, is he going to have a good year or a bad year? But they don't ask so specifically, how many home runs is he going to hit? How many wins is he going to have? I mean, it's just impossible to answer. I think you can predict if somebody's going to be good or bad, but to go beyond that and to predict like how good exactly is he going to hit 28 homers or 22 homers, it seems like overly precise for something that nobody has any idea what the answer is.
Any other questions that you found interesting?
A lot of them ask me what I think of Ohtani as a person and like how he behaves. And I really don't know the answer to that one very well because I don't spend that much time with him and he doesn't speak very much English to us anyway. So I don't have a whole lot more insight as to what Ohtani is like off the field than anybody else.
So a lot of Japanese TV stations, they show Ohtani picking something on the field while he's like after he hit a home run or walking to the first base. And they talk about him, bowing to the umpire, I think, taking off his cap or helmet, I think. Do sports writers there talk about those things or even pay attention to those things?
Not too much. I do remember when Ohtani first came up as a rookie, that there was a little bit of a big deal made about, at one point, we noticed that when he drank some water, he threw the cup in the trash can, whereas all the American players just throw it on the ground. So it was kind of an interesting cultural difference. And I think Ohtani is he's just very neat. And I think that he sees little things on the field, little scraps, and he wants to like clean them up a little bit. I think that's just the way he is. I don't know if it's a cultural thing or just him, but definitely he does more so than American players.
Is that considered something positive or is it something, it's just cultural difference?
It's just a difference. I think that, I don't think anybody dislikes American players for throwing their cups on the ground. I think it's just an interesting contrast.
Do American media outlets talk about athletes' romantic relationships?
No, not really. I mean, there are some media outlets that would talk about things occasionally, but certainly none of the sports outlets, none of the sports writers who are writing about baseball would write about any players' romantic connections. There's like TMZ might have something about that, but no baseball writers would write anything like that.
And even TMZ, they only write about them when these athletes go out with big celebrities like Giselle, right? Like Tom Brady did. But they're not going to write about, let's say, a baseball player dating a regular person or even other athletes. That don't make news, right?
Right. I think that we have no shortage of celebrities here in the United States, and there's a lot of interest in the personal lives of actors and musicians, and the people that are sports fans are really probably a different group of people than the people that are really interested in the personal lives of celebrities. So there's just not the interest. I just don't think people care who baseball players are dating.
Topic about Ohtani's romantic life, that doesn't make news, right? Here, nobody cares about it, at least the media.
No, we don't care, and we have little enough exposure to actually talk to Ohtani that we really just have to stick to baseball because we can't get too far off track with our limited opportunities.
The Japanese media often talk about Ohtani's looks. Is that considered appropriate in America?
No, not really. I would never do anything like that. It's not really relevant to him as a baseball player, which is what I write about.
Japanese fans or Japanese media talk about Ohtani's size of his head. They think he has long legs, and they talk quite a bit about that on TV. What's your reaction when you see those headlines?
Well, it's obviously a very different style of coverage, as we would not address those kind of things. So I never noticed that he had a large head or long legs or anything like that. I just know he's a really good baseball player. He's a really good athlete. I mean, it would just be sort of awkward and odd, and people would wonder why you were talking about it. They'd want to know, like, what does the size of his head have to do with anything? So unless you were making a point that he was smarter about baseball because he had a big head, then I don't think people would really be interested.
What do you consider is your role as a beat writer?
It's very simple. My role is to tell people something they don't know. So anybody who wants to follow the Angels, they can watch the games on TV. They don't need my help for that. But so I try to add something that they can't pick up just from watching the game on TV. So a lot of times that can be just explaining why a player is doing well or doing poorly, explaining why a team makes the decision they make, explaining what is going to happen with a certain situation just involving the rules, talking about how somebody's coming back from an injury, when are they going to be back? Why is it taking so long? All these things are things that you can't really figure out just from watching on TV. So it's my job to find out all those things and relay that information to the readers.
What are keys to finding such information?
You have to talk to people. Basically, that's the way you do it, which has been a lot harder to do since 2020 because we have much less access to talk to people. Things are finally now starting to open up again to where you can walk down on the field and have a conversation with a player, not just an interview, but just an informal conversation and learn things. But that is basically what it is. You talk to players, they tell you things as you build a relationship with them. They trust you and they tell you more things. And the more trust that the players have with you, the more they will tell you and the more information you can pass on to the readers.
Who's your target audience?
Well, just Angels fans, obviously. And you try to not focus too much on the super hardcore fans that really know everything that's going on or that watch every single game and don't forget anything. And you try not to focus too much on the very casual fans that barely even understand, who Ohtani is, for example. So you try to get the most people in the middle. And so you want to try to kind of tell people something without being too redundant or too obvious, but still sort of including as many people as you can.
A lot of baseball writers in the US, including yourself, seem to be really active on Twitter. Tell me how you use Twitter.
Well, I think the basic point of Twitter is to get people to read my stories. So the more followers I have on Twitter, the more opportunity I have for somebody to click the link to read my story when I tweet it out. So the way to gain those followers is to just provide them useful information beyond my stories, about telling them what's going on with the game and interacting with them when they have questions. So I try to do all those things and build a following, and the larger following you have, the more people can come read my stories, the more people will subscribe to my newspaper online. And so that's pretty much what I try to do on Twitter.